Welcome to the weekly from the Blue Room. Me and Dave this week, we're bookending your working week with Blue Monday and the weekly. How lucky is everyone?
If only that was intentionally.
It's not. It's just the way it's worked out. As ever, if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment, give us a like. That'd be lovely. Subscribe if you haven't already. Tell your mates, tell your friends, tell your family about it. If you're listening on the podcast, do leave us a rating. 5-star would be lovely. And any comments as well. It's always good to hear from everyone. And do, as I say, just share our podcast and tell people about it, because it all really does help. Right, Dave, let's get into it. West Ham tomorrow. Feels like we've that Wolves result felt like a little bit of a sort of bump back down to earth, really, after the sort of the new manager bounce we've had with Moyes. We've had some really good results in that, but West Ham coming up. Not a great game for us at home. If you look at the stats, how are you feeling about this one?
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? I think I was saying to Matt earlier this week about I don't want to get to the process now where it's it's end of season. We're definitely safe, 16 points and all that sort of thing. I think it becomes very cliche that you haven't got much to play for. I want us to play for stuff, and I know we've mentioned Goodison about like we can't end that in a very sort of boring way. We need to keep this up. We need to keep up this the intensity we've got when we play, and we need to keep it. It needs to be kept enjoyable for us to watch. I think that's more important than anything else, really. That we actually like watching our side, because it's been many years since we have, and watching us play. Even that performance at Wolves, we weren't at our best by any means, but Everton was still. That's a game Everton probably could have gone and won, or should have gone and won. Wolves would say the same, of course, but
yeah,
if Everton took 3 points there, it wouldn't have been anything unusual about that game. And West Ham are a funny one, really. I mean, they've got Bowen, and that's essentially, I think, by and large, might be like quite a lazy thing to say, but if you keep him quiet, then you generally, that's a big chunk of what West Ham are able to do in an attacking capacity to stop, and prevent them from doing too much in the game. And they always seem to me as a side that's always not similar to us, but they're always on the verge of implosion. There's so many times I look at them and think, I mean, Lopetegui, I would like that just seemed to happen in the click of a finger, didn't it? That happened. Potter's gone in there, and obviously I was reading a comment before. He didn't really say in particular about Everton, but he was talking about how many clubs approached them. And I'd be shocked if Everton didn't when we sacked Dyche. And do you know what? I'd probably go as far as saying he was probably their top target, Everton's top target, to go and get him initially. Not saying like I got absolutely ripped for saying something about Michael Keane. We should keep him the other day. I was getting ripped apart on YouTube. So by no means am I saying we should have got Graham Potter instead of Moyes, but there are plenty of fans who would have said so, because he was out there and didn't have a job.
I maintain he wouldn't have made half time after the first game. Potter, he's too delicate a flower for me. If the Brighton fans booing him upset him, he'd have no chance at Goodison.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. He looks like he's just been binned from his wife as well. He doesn't look like
he had that glow up when he moved to Chelsea, didn't he?
Yeah.
Remember, he got like his beard trimmed. He had like the roll neck on. He had a proper glow up, and then it just disappeared within about 3 weeks.
It's just not him. He needs to be wearing the trackie and all that. And look, that's nothing against him. I think he's a really good manager, and he's just. I mean, I feel unfortunate for him because he's never going to turn down a Chelsea. I think it would have been ridiculous to turn that down from Brighton. But the job he did at Brighton, some managers just fit some clubs, i.e. we've got one of them who's exactly like that.
Yeah.
And yet I watched them, and the fans seem a bit strange to me, because it almost seems like it's instant that they kick off on a manager or kick off on the players and start booing their own team when you've got 1-0 down in a game that's largely irrelevant, given that they're at the same stage of a season that we are. It just seems like and I get this about fans, and we've been like that in the past, haven't we? Maybe we're not like that because of how shit we've been for so long, but when you're watching your team, it's like, this isn't good enough. We should be doing this. We should be doing that. Yeah. We're this size. We should be in and around European places. I get that there's a frustration there. We understand why we're in the place we are. I think West Ham don't fully take that as a perspective. They just constantly think that they're entitled to a certain part of the Premier League.
Yeah, I think for West Ham fans, I mean, obviously I don't know because I'm not one, but I do know a couple of West Ham fans, and they got a lot of stick for getting sort of getting sick and tired of Moyes. And I could see why they did, because we've been there as well. So when he's your manager, you do take him for granted. I think it gets to a point where you kind of think, well, it's not going to get any better now from here on in. With West Ham, though, we did win a trophy, so that was a big thing. But then they did lose Declan Rice the season after, which would have been huge for them. So I think for them, their frustration probably is that they've not kicked on since winning that Europa Conference, have they? They've sort of probably stagnated a little bit. So, they're below us in the table now, which is a massive drop off from, where they were when they qualified for the Europa Conference. So it's a very, very strange team and a strange club, but a bit like Everton in many ways, whereby the expectation probably is undermined by what's actually happening on the pitch and in the club in general. So yeah, I do have a lot of sympathy with West Ham fans, but I do get where they're coming from, I think.
I think you're right. I think they're at a different stage in what we have. If you look at the story, the Everton story, the way it's been in years gone by, and then you've gone and got Moyes back, and let's face it, there are many fans who didn't want Moyes back. I would say more than half of our fan base didn't want him. I think that's probably quite fair to say, given many of that theory that you could never go back to. You had, and,
yeah, it was definitely very smart, wasn't it?
I mean, who knows? I mean, he's had how many games have we had? Just over 10, nearly a dozen games he's had in charge. It'll remain to be seen what goes on in the summer and beyond. See how he does when he's got like a clean slate and things like that. But with West Ham, it's very easy in hindsight to say you're a gang of bellends for kicking off on him, because I understand what you mean. It's hard to find a different term than say you have sympathy with them. Maybe have a bit of empathy with them.
Yeah,
I go as far as saying, and perhaps they're a little bit behind us in the sort of conveyor belt that we had in sort of being in trouble, because what they've done with Lopetegui, you got rid of him quite quickly. You've got Potter in there. I've seen them play a couple of games where they've looked handy, they've looked decent, and then there's others where I'm looking like I'm thinking, he must be thinking, what have I signed up for here? Yeah. They've got a big squad. They've got players that they don't seem to be settled, even though they've been there a while. Souček, he was one of the revelations in the Premier League a few years ago, wasn't he? He just fell off the boil completely. You don't tend to hear much of him anymore. Bowen's not going to stay there, let's face it. He's not going to probably beyond this summer. He's not going to be a West Ham player, because you'll get one of the big boys in the Premier League coming in for him. And you need to talk about that already. And yeah, like the players they've got there, they've got some really individually talented players there, but it doesn't seem to me like it's a particularly of a team-based side. I feel like Kudus as well. He's one of my favourite players to watch. Yeah, but on an individual basis, if you get what I mean. You look at them and you think who sticks out, rather than that's a really good team performance. And I mean, to be fair though, Les, in the opposite direction there, that makes them all the more dangerous to us, really. If you haven't done your homework, which couple of days the individual players are they're able to give us a load of trouble on Saturday. So you need to be looking at that a lot more serious. It's not a conventional way of looking at a Premier League side, I don't think.
Yeah, well, they've got James Ward-Prowse as well, who's been a constant pain in our arse, hasn't he? So it's kind of one of them where you're thinking, like, if he's on the pitch, just don't give away any free kicks.
Don't foul. Yeah.
Like we did against Man United, we could set ourselves up for a similar situation there, whereby all they had was set pieces that Fernandez could hit in, and that's all they had to offer, and we kept giving away free kicks in the second half. So yeah, we want to stay away from that. Lucas Paqueta is a bit of a story as well here, because this is his final game before he could get a lifetime ban for gambling. So I don't know, if you look at it the Everton way, you kind of know where this one goes, don't you?
Roger Armstrong being in touch, has he? Yeah, Roger's been WhatsApping him down at Cheltenham, has he? Yeah, I mean, it's getting these stories seem to be more and more regular, don't they? And I'm not too sure how you don't learn your lesson if you're a professional footballer when you see this cropping up all the time about gambling. I do wonder, Les, as well, like, not taking too fine a point on it, although I suppose I am really to talk about this, but could it be difficult if you're a professional footballer and you're desperate to put a tenner? It's going to be more than a tenner because you're a professional footballer who's a millionaire. Yeah. First of all, what's the thrill in terms of gambling anyway? Because you certainly don't need the money. So it is an addiction for all intents and purposes, aside from the financial thing, which I guess most people who gamble is to win money. That's obviously the intent to do so. But also, how difficult would it be for me or you right now to say, I want to put a tenner on the Cheltenham Gold Cup, which, for instance, is later today. I want to put a tenner on this, but I don't want my missus and kids to know. How easy would that be for you to do so? Really easy.
Yeah.
You can message me and say, Dave, I've transferred you the tenner. Put that on for me. Don't have to say a word. Are they really naive and thick to not be able to do that in order to get caught? I just don't understand how. Like, has someone outed him? How's he done it? He simply hasn't got a betting account on Bet365 or Sky Bet and gone on it and gone, yeah, I've put 10 grand on this, and it flags up because he's a player who's at West Ham. I've no idea what's come about that. And I'm just looking at it and think, how thick are you? But you know, what's much more important is having the intention of doing so. I mean, there's clearly a deeper issue there with players who do that. It was a Newcastle lad as well.
Oh yeah, the Italian fella won it.
Tonali, isn't it? Yeah,
Tonali. There was Ivan Toney as well.
Ivan Toney went and done it as well. I'm like, what's going on? I mean, I remember, like, I've read books in the past and heard interviews from players. It's like the come down from actually playing games is really difficult for them to cope with mentally, and I do understand that. I think, you know, they're like, when you finish training, at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. What have you got to do? It literally is go and play golf, game of snooker. You're gonna sit around your house, say you've got a couple of kids who are in school, your missus wherever. I mean, I think that, look, I'm sounding like I've got sympathy for these people. I think most of us would really want that life.
Well, the thing is, though, you know, the young fellas with a lot of money and a lot of free time on their hands, and you know, football is awash with gambling sponsors. It's everywhere. So it for me, it always seems a bit hypocritical the way it's like it's frowned upon within the game, yet they'll gladly take sponsorship money from any betting company anywhere in the world. You know, you look at like some of the stories that have come out with the betting companies that have been sponsoring football clubs. They're not even real companies; they're like shell companies, and it's pretty rotten for me. And you know, they shouldn't do it because it's in the rules that they shouldn't do it. And if they get caught, obviously the sanctions are massive. But as you say, it's probably not a money thing, is it? Because the money they're going to make out of it, they don't need it. So it is basically, I'm bored, get a bit of a kick out of doing this. And the whole thing's just, it's all very weirdly skewed, I think, because you can't have an industry that's so prevalent within football and then tell the players in it, well, you can't have anything to do with that, by the way. It's just...
Yeah. I think as well, I mean, you know, how many times people, you listen to the adverts, or you probably shouldn't say much about it, but anyway, you know, you listen to the adverts that we have in our content, and the odds, gambling, whatever, and it does always interest me at the end of it, where, you know, what's the saying? It's not
when the fun stops, stop. Yeah.
I mean, it just seems to me really patronising and
it's
like
a bit glib, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, oh, by the way, and they put a nice, you know, slash on fucking whatever it is, a cross or whatever this logo is.
Yeah,
that they do at the end of it. I'm like, well, that's some sort of contradiction you've got. I mean, like, it's like Paddy Power wrecks my head. Like, really can't stand it because it's all this sort of. They had that dickhead Farley doing it, didn't he? Like these adverts and
oh yeah.
And look, the odd one or two, you think, you know what, that's relatively funny. But then, like, they'll do a load of overkill with. I think they're doing a lot with Peter Crouch at the moment. There's been a few adverts on him, and I actually like Peter Crouch, but I'm thinking, you know, again, what money does he need to go and represent Paddy Power? I've no idea with that, the way they go with that sort of thing. But you're absolutely right about that, and I think you get into that position when you have a life there, and I try to put that in our place there. So yeah, let's have me or you here, Leslie. I work at the BBC. I'm a freelancer, so probably a little bit of a different case. But yourself, you have generally a 9 till 5 job.
Yeah, you
travel quite a lot. Say if you were to half that and say, right, Les, you don't have to travel, but you're working 8 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. What do you then go and do in the rest of your day? In general, what would you go and do?
Well, I'd go to the gym. I'd read. I'd probably play on the Xbox. I'd be running around after the kids as well, but that's a different story.
But you, and amongst most, would not think, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to go on this website and play roulette.
No.
And by all means, mate, I've done it. I've had terrible experiences with gambling, and it is an addiction. It is a massive addiction. How that manifests itself with professional footballers, I have no idea.
Well,
you couldn't simply just turn to your family and say, oh, do you know, I was just bored.
Yeah, I think my thing would be I may take up afternoon drinking. That could happen, and that's a similar thing, isn't it? You just get used to having a bevy in the afternoon, and then suddenly you've got a problem.
It's like they go hand in hand. I think you're right. There. It's like when you, I don't know, you remember in the old days. These days, you go into a pub and there's a fruit machine.
Yeah,
you don't see it these days, do you? Because it's all like, I don't even know, like digital machines or whatever it is these days. But yeah, it's a really strange conundrum, I think, in and amongst like what you look at in society and see a footballer going and do that. I think it actually makes you quite angry about it, because you're like, you know, how precious a precious kind of life you've got to be able to go and be so wasteful when the rest of us work so hard for our living. It's really like it's I guess for most people it's really hard to see that. Whereas other people find it funny, you know, other people find it like, oh, do you know what? I'd do that, and you could probably think, do you know what? I'd probably do similar if I was in that position. But to get to risk your career like that, I just don't understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, it is crazy, isn't it?
A lifetime ban.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would resort you to gambling more, because you've got no work to do at all.
Well, yeah, that's it. You know, just yeah, it's only got to make it worse. Yeah, but I mean, anyway, back to the game. It feels inevitable that he's going to score, just purely because it's his last game before this hearing. So, just on West Ham at home, then, just before we move on for the last bit, it always used to be a game that, like, you could quite safely say we were going to win. Really, we had a period where I think we've beat West Ham more times than any other team in the Premier League that we've beaten. I think we are sort of their bogey team, or we beat them more often than not. But if you look at like the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've lost 5 of the last 10 at home against them. Which is really that's really quite a bad record at home for Everton. Even over the last 10 years, which haven't been great, we generally, you know, losing 5 to West Ham is a lot. So this one's it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I think we're on the same point in the league. We're ahead of them on goal difference. We're in that little bunch bit in the middle with Tottenham and Man United, whereby we're not going to move much further up or down. So there's no real jeopardy riding on this game, but it's I don't know. I don't even know what way this is going to go. It's quite hard to call, isn't it?
It is hard to call, yeah. And, you know, it's interesting to hear Moyes' comments, I think, at the end of the game against Wolves. So I think it was associated with it was part of his pre-match ahead of this game, talking about his, he didn't say this verbatim, but it was sort of like his love affair with West Ham and coming back there for the second time, which, again, I think you're talking about West Ham fans towards him. They must have actually despised that decision when they brought him back for the second time, because when he left the first time, it was like it was
hadn't worked, had it?
Exactly. To get him back in, I'd like to know on fly on the wall how that come about and how they selected that, because I know they're bonkers what goes on there with Brady and the rest of the gang that they've got down there. It's all a bit mad. I watch The Apprentice every week as well, and I'm like, how's she run effectively a Premier League football side? Yeah, so when he's gone back there and he's fought against the odds to get to where he did, winning that trophy. And then, I don't know, you become quite precious as fans, don't you? If you go and do that, and then it becomes an absolute disaster. Hate to use that term again, but I think it's one that we regularly use. He's got credit in the bank. I think if you've just won a trophy that you haven't done since Bobby Moore was a kid or whatever it was, you've gone and won a trophy then. He should be given a lot more of a considerable amount of time to be able to sort things out and turn things around, you know. I think Moyes has got the withdrawal to basically say, you know what, I want to leave this job anyway. You talk about a manager that's achieved what he has. He's regarded as a bit of a laughing stock, isn't he, Moyes? When we first got him back, I think everybody aside from Evertonians would laugh in the head off at him coming back in, and I'm delighted that he's gone and proved himself. And West Ham, what he was saying there about the personal relationship which he's had with West Ham, he seemed quite. I wouldn't go as far as saying troubled by this, but I think it's an uncomfortable fixture for him. I have to say that. I think it's going to be a difficult one when he's seen a lot of people there who he knew who he was the front and centre of getting them a trophy with a lot of those players that are there, coming up against them. On the other hand of that, he should be quite ruthless for us, knowing what they've got, knowing what they're all about, knowing how they should play, knowing what Graham Potter's like as a manager. Everton should be in good state there to go and win this game. I just hope it's not flat, Les. I just hope it's not. I'd take a 3-3 draw than I would than 0-0 boring. Do you know what I mean? I want to see what we've continued to do. I want to see that progress the way we watch us play. Yeah. And even that game against Wolves, you'd probably say, it was relatively boring, probably the worst game we could watch, apart from the Bournemouth one in the FA Cup since Moyes has been back. But even then, if you put that in context, it wasn't anywhere near a poor Sean Dyche game, was it?
No,
so
no.
Everton a good side.
Way, was it?
Exactly. I maintain that Everton are a good side to watch, and as long as we keep that going, then the result itself takes care of itself. Aside from Man United, which is a complete injustice of the way in which we played and what we should have had at the end of the game. It should be a really good game to watch here, given what Potter will want them to be doing. Not going to be Route 1 all over the place, is it? So, I think it'll be a cracker then. Yeah, you're right about that history against West Ham. It always felt like we beat them at home. I always used to feel that about Fulham. You'd beat Fulham at home, but always lose away.
Well, we did. We had an agreement with Fulham, didn't we? We had a gentleman's agreement whereby they beat us down there and we beat them up here. And then I think we bolstered up by beating them down there, and it's never been the same since.
It was the last day of the season before the FA Cup final, if you remember it. Osman scored the belter, and it was like glorious weather. That was obviously 2009, wasn't it, when we went and did that? These feel like a similar thing. Didn't Mopé score against them the last time we beat them?
Right, he did. That was his only goal for us, wasn't it? Yeah. But I think he was the player who always scored against West Ham. It was one of those weird quirks.
They should be ashamed of that.
I know. Especially when he was a Brighton player as well. Christ.
Yeah.
So there's no new team news for this game. It's going to be the same as last week. Team relatively pretty much picks itself, doesn't it? I do fancy us in this one though. Form table, we're well ahead. West Ham haven't had that new manager bounce quite as much, have they? Really, I don't think at all. I
think the interesting thing about that, Les, is that no one's really had to have it, given how shit everybody at the bottom thing. And that's I'm trying not to give people a disservice for that, because obviously we're delighted in the way Moyes has gone and got us to the position we're in right now. But that could have easily gone the other way, I suppose. We could still be sitting here now, and it's like 6-point games against West Ham, and you've got Ipswich to come there, and you have to win to stay in the league. None of that this year. I mean, it looks like a comfortable. It should be an enjoyable afternoon for all of us to watch here. And look, you've got people. We did this the other day. Then we got people playing for their contracts here. Yeah. There's 13 players we went through on the list, thinking that, they're probably going to go. They're going to go. You've still got 10 games left. You have the chance you can change people's minds. Maybe like a Lindstrom comes to mind here, who I think most fans would say possibly give him a loan, or I guess people would say you certainly wouldn't go and buy him, given whatever the financial situation is.
He's not done enough to sign, has he?
You could go and rip everything apart for 10 games, and then you're like, you know what? Yeah, you've got to get him at least back on loan, or go and try and sign him from Napoli. That's on the cards for many of them. Alcaraz already, I think, has made up most of our minds. But nonetheless, you're going to get something from a player there who won't stop. I think he's going to be ruthless and he will not duck his head in any of these games towards the end of the season. So there's plenty up for grabs. There's plenty up for grabs for those players.
Yeah, it will be good to see Alcaraz start tomorrow, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And what did we be talking about? It was sort of him or Decore. It would never have both. I'd like to see him start in that position there and put him at the front and centre as the nucleus of the way in which we play, particularly Goodison, because he's an exciting player, isn't he? When he gets the ball, it always feels like something's going to happen. Always feels like he's going to. He gives absolutely everything at every moment of every game, doesn't he? And that's the sort of Everton nature that we want from a player. And he seems to have a quite bizarre partnership with Beto as well.
Yeah, they do seem to be on the same wavelength a bit, don't they? Which is
it's like when he gets the ball, I just seems like it's quite funny because they just look like the most like unconventional partnership that you'd think about, like players that want a midfielder who links really well with a striker. Those two just don't like they'd have anywhere near the same kind of game, but it sort of works.
But it definitely does. I think in terms of atmosphere as well, if we've got 5 games left, the 1878 are putting on a big display again tomorrow. 5 games left. So we've all got to be up for this one. I think, I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to it again. It's nice to look forward to the game again. Right, just to round off this weekly, little look at the England squad. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's always interesting to look at. Particularly this time, because Jarrad Branthwaite's been left out. He's not had a recall, which I find a little bit odd because he's had a good season. Dan Burn from Newcastle's been called up. That was the one that caught my eye first, and thinking, how's Dan Burn been called up ahead of Jarrad Branthwaite? To be fair, he's a right back, so it's not pretty much like for like. And his stats kind of measure up with Branthwaite. They're very similar stats, although Dan Burn's played more games this season. The one that stuck out for me, though, is Jarrell Quansah from the Reds getting called up ahead of Jarrad Branthwaite. Now, we know he plays in an infinitely better side, but that really shouldn't be a reason to call up a player who was clearly inferior to Jarrad Branthwaite. I've got some stats here. Branthwaite's made 21 appearances to Quansah's 10. Branthwaite has kept 7 clean sheets. Quansah's kept none. Blocks 17 for Branthwaite, 4 for Quansah. Interceptions 23 v5. Tackles 30 v9. Successful tackles 17 v7. Clearances 130 to 12. It's like even if you just look at the stats, which don't always tell the full story, it's mad, that isn't it? It is nuts.
Well, do you know, I'm no defence here of Tuchel, and I'm no fan by any means. If people listen to us for a long time, I really can't stand international football unless it takes up a summer. And this year is a summer that's like completely free of any football tournaments. I think from Tuchel, and I like Tuchel, I'm quite a fan of his, or I was. He just felt, he won the Champions League with Chelsea, and again, another side that just threw him by the wayside, as they'll probably go into with Potter quite quickly if they don't go and, with Maresca, they'll go and do that at some point, no doubt, if they don't go and win the conference themselves at a canter, which they probably should.
Yeah, they probably should.
You've got somebody, I think, that you take it from his perspective, you think, well, I've got to see this fella then. I need to, if he's a promising young player, I've seen him enough, I've seen enough that there's something in him, but I haven't seen him play enough, then this is a type of game as a friendly, you go and pick him. But then again, you can probably say the same thing about Branthwaite at international level. We've not seen him. How many times he played? Just a few minutes did he get on? Come on as a sub or something? Did he?
Yeah, he's not played much, has he? Because he got injured, didn't he? When he was like hitting his peak and like talk about Man United, he got injured.
Yeah, and look, I think I'd like to think that Tuchel would know what he was getting in Branthwaite. That's the only thing that's offending with is knowing that. Well, I'll keep him in my pocket until it comes to a point where I'll need him much further down the line as in a more important game than what's coming up with these friendlies or national leagues, whatever they're called these days, that try to glorify friendlies.
Yeah,
it just does me head in.
Too much. Get rid.
And I feel that he's. It feels like the Everton case. I was used to associate that. My dad always used to call it that. When you had an Everton player play for England, he'd never stay at Everton long. Yeah. And I think if you looked at Michael Ball, used to be one for me.
Army was the one for me.
Jeffers as well. He did it. Obviously Rooney's the main one, front and centre for that. And you've got players that I don't think Everton are the same type of club we would refer to like that nowadays, or it doesn't work like it did when it used to be the top 4 or 5 sides, all of their England players would get a game and then nobody else really got a look in. I think if you go and look statistically, those under Sven and around those days, it'd just be the players from those sides. Because, I suppose from their point of view, the logic would be, well, they're the top sides for a reason. And the reason is that they've got England players there who are the best English players. Okay, yeah. But now it's completely different. I mentioned Bowen there at West Ham. He's a regular England starter. there are players like that come, and I'm all for that. I think it's good to see that, like, refreshing. You're seeing managers look further afield and just, United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal. You're looking in different directions to that. Branthwaite, I think he's. I don't see there's many others around him that start ahead of him. I think we spoke about it. We haven't. You on 4 centre backs at Everton. We had a good discussion about that. He should certainly be one of the 4 centre backs if you're picking a squad the same as we do, as one of the England 4 centre backs there. I think that's pretty obvious for me. Who else would be there?
Well, he's a left-footed centre back who's very comfortable on the ball, great in the air, fast, strong. He's got everything. Now, a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I'm glad he's not been called up to England," and I get that, because there's more chance of injury, as you say. There's more chance of him getting tapped up and going off somewhere else. The thing that always worries me about it, though, is that these players, they want to play for England. He wants to play for England. If he's not getting picked for England while he's at Everton, that's another reason for him to be like, well, maybe I should be somewhere else. And that's what happens. So you kind of, I don't know, you're sort of caught in the middle there, aren't you? If he does go to England, the players are there to maybe say, yeah, come and play for us at Arsenal or whatever.
That's the exact theory, yeah.
If he doesn't, in his head, then he's thinking, well, I can't stay here because I'm not going to play for England. So it's a bit of a no-win situation. But I think in that regard, the sooner he got called up and he gets that sort of thing out of his system, so he knows, even though he's at Everton, he's getting recognised for the good player that he is, he can still get in the England team, doesn't necessarily have to go anywhere else. Because, don't forget, this Everton, hopefully, is going to be very different to the Everton we've seen over the past 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Hopefully, we're going to see something different now, where it's a place with the new ground, players want to come and fulfill their ambitions. And I'm not saying we're going to go out and win the lot. We are. Not saying that. But I'm just saying, the club is going to have sufficient ambition for these players, and it's going to show sufficient progress for these players. And if they're not getting called up to England or their national side while playing for Everton, that's something that can get in the head. And that's what worries me about things like this.
I think it's interesting as well. Have you seen his comments on a BBC piece where he's speaking about it's all about winning trophies? You've got to win trophies. If you have a look at the piece that's on the BBC website, okay. He's talking about the whole point in having a career is winning trophies. If this happened any time previous, although maybe I'm clutching at straws to think it doesn't happen now, you'd think that's a big, I'm going.
It doesn't go well, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Unless maybe that's why we got Moyes in to go and win the Europa Conference and say, "There's your trophy. You can go and sit in the corner and all that." There, Jarrad, you're not going anywhere. And I feel that like England is very much in that bracket, isn't it? Going there and you've got Pickford there, haven't you? There's like England's number one there, saying, "Listen, don't listen to these dickheads. Jarrad, Everton's great. I'm staying in Everton. I've got my testimonial for Everton coming up next year."
Yeah, well, there's a player who could easily have gone somewhere else and probably won stuff.
Yeah.
Had he not been getting picked for England, I think he would have done. I don't think Jordan Pickford stays at Everton if he's not winning stuff and he's not playing for England.
I think that's a really interesting theory to have there. And hopefully at the end of his career, that'll be a really decent discussion to have with him, and perhaps he releases a book or whatever. But he's it surprised me. One of the things, most difficult things I've come to think that he probably shouldn't be an Everton player, and I mean that. I'm going to get ripped for saying that, but I mean that in the best of the context I'm trying to say that in regards to he's been the England number one for a number of years now. He hasn't won a trophy. Given Everton's situation, let's take some perspective here. He's not an Evertonian. And that's what I was sticking in my mind here, where players stay at Everton who could have gone on to achieve bigger things from elsewhere.
Yeah.
Leighton Baines probably being one of them. Leighton Baines, one of the best left backs in the world, could have gone and won somewhere else and won all sorts. He decided to stay at Everton. He decided that. It wasn't because the club forced him to stay. If he wants to go, Leighton Baines would have gone, because we know that the players select this ultimately. Jordan Pickford's another one, and I think it's a bit of an enigma, really, why he's still at Everton. If you weren't an Evertonian, then you're probably thinking, it's pretty obvious here. I hope Branthwaite isn't of that line of thinking, but when he's coming out and saying things like that, which is perfectly entitled to. I'm not moaning him for saying it, because it should be a positive to basically give Everton a kick up the arse and say, listen, you're only going to keep players like me if you start achieving things at this club. You know, at the very least, get in Europe, you know, things that you feel like you've got a chance of, cup competitions, which we've been woeful at for various reasons for many, many years now. I don't think it's particularly difficult to give him the intention that Everton aren't that far away from winning a trophy. Obviously not the Premier League, but other trophies. And I think that's what he's saying there in terms of, I need to win silverware. And look, he's only saying something that's obvious. I'd be moaning at him if he wasn't at that level of ambition. So it's on Everton's back to go and deal with that and do something about it, and just keep giving him a new contract every single summer.
Yeah, just keep updating it. Yeah, and just a quick one on the Evertonian thing. That doesn't seem to make a difference either. If you look at Ross Barkley and Wayne Rooney, you couldn't wait to get out the club. So,
true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We can't win, can we? But yeah, I just thought that was quite an interesting one. Just that little head-to-head there, because I do find it quite baffling. Right, we'll leave it there then, Dave. We've got obviously West Ham tomorrow. Let me think. What was I going to say then?
Mailbag.
Yeah, well, I've got mailbag later. God, yeah, 2-day podcast. Sorry, 2 podcast day. It's too early for this. So got mailbag coming up later. That'll be out this evening, which is Friday. Let us know what you think about that Jarrad Branthwaite stuff, because I find it really quite interesting to hear people's thoughts. As I said, I'm of the opinion that I would sooner these players get called up. A lot of people think I'd sooner they didn't get called up. There's more chance of injury, getting tapped up, whatever. So yeah, do let us know what you think about that. Thanks to Dave. Thanks to everyone for watching and listening. Enjoy the weekend. Hopefully Everton win. Up the Toffees.